Hello, my name is Greg Wickler, and I'm the treasurer for Our Savior's Lutheran Church. And today we're going to talk about the fiscal year 2025 budget. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. All right. So let's see, here we go. Okay. So as you all know, every year we put together a budget for the next fiscal year, which starts for Our Saviors. We have a fiscal year that starts on July 1st of every year and goes for 12 months, ending on June 30th of the following year. So in this case, fiscal year 2025 will start July 1st of 2024 and take us 12 months until June 30th of 2025. So today what I'm going to do is spend a little bit of time providing you an overview of the budget development process and then describe the results to date in terms of our pledge drive and our estimates of receipts and disbursements or expenditures, and then finally the projected budget for fiscal year 2025. So first, on the budget development process, we launched the stewardship campaign on April 21st. A little bit late this year. We did that intentionally because we wanted to wait to sort out staffing changes following Pastor Dan's retirement. So we actually waited just a little bit so that we could secure our interim pastor employment with Scott Sorensen, and then also secure some other staffing gaps that we anticipated would happen with Pastor Dan's retirement. So parishioners were asked to pledge a multiple of methods. Most preferably is the method of just filling out a form online through a QR code that we supply to parishioners every week in the bulletin, as well as on our OSLC's weekly newsletter, electronic newsletter, and also a link from our website. We promoted the campaign with the blurbs in our Sunday bulletins, as well as email blasts and actual verbal pleas during church services. Receipts forecasts were developed based on the pledges received. And those estimates for not received pledges are based on past giving trends of individual families. So facility partner estimates of receipts or revenue were also developed and based on actual leases that we have in place, plus estimates of short-term rentals. On the expense side, we developed forecasts of expenditures, including mission and outreach, which are actually formulaic based on a format of 10% of our giving is automatically dedicated to our mission and outreach efforts. We also developed staff costs based on actual salaries plus fringe benefits and other benefits in the staff compensation packages. Administrative costs were based on past trends and expected upcoming costs for the facility. And then programs and events were estimated based on input from staff. So the budget is balanced from assuming that the budget expenditures don't exceed they typically exceed the amount of receipts that we're projecting. So we end up with a budget deficit. And usually it's balanced through fund transfers, expenditure and adjustments, and stretch assumptions on our revenue receipts. And I'll just say in conclusion on this slide that OSLC's finances are stable, they're robust. We're very confident in our financial position and going into this period of significant transition with Pastor Dan's retirement and our discernment process as we explore who we are and where we want to be going as a congregation. All right. So the stewardship campaign response, we received a total of 34 pledges. We estimated another 45 givers, and that was a total of 79. And these are just numbers. The Vanco e-giving is the electronic giving that is called Simply Giving, and many families actually have their pledges and their tithing connected to this system. So that's where most of our offering revenue comes from. 161,000 is projected for this upcoming fiscal year. We also estimate other giving based on checks that are received, play contributions, as well as other methods, and that's another 116,000 and change that's estimated there. And then finally, other income, which includes stocks and miscellaneous methods of tithing, and that will total at least an estimated total of $315,000 for the upcoming fiscal year. When you compare that to previous fiscal years, you can see the 315,000 on the right-hand side. Compare that to previous years, the past 3 years. First, I'll talk about pledges. The number of pledges in this current round of budget development process is actually lower than we have had historically in the last 3 years. You can see in fiscal year 2022 is 48, and then it rose to 51, came back down to 45, but the average is certainly in the high 40s. And this year we were surprised to see fewer pledges. It's not necessarily part of that is reflected in our forecast of giving. As you can see, 315,000 is our forecasted giving estimate. And if you compare that to previous years, it's on a bit of a decline. Actual giving, so the forecasts are not actual, so we can go back and compare what actually occurred in that fiscal year after the fiscal year is closed out relative to what we projected. And usually we have a 95 to 97% hit rate. So we obviously couldn't do that in this upcoming fiscal year because we haven't experienced it yet. But you can see that our estimation method is fairly accurate, at least to the point of being 95% accurate, which is not too bad. Okay, the proposed budget for fiscal year 2025, when everything is all sort of said, is essentially $610,330. You can see the offerings of $315,000, which I just explained earlier, combined with an estimated $240,000 revenue from our facility partners. That includes our leases with Springstone School and other Creekside Commons partners that we have long-term leases with. And I'll come back to the shortfall in a minute. Our disbursements are estimated to be, for staff, $338,000, administration $217,650, programs and events 22.4, and then I'll go back to mission and outreach is just a 10% of the 315. So that adds up to 610,330. Since we didn't have that ability to estimate the revenues or receipts that equate to that 610,330, we're $55,330 short. And we decided that we could make that up with our designated fund, our rainy day reserve fund that we have set aside for this very purpose. And we might also challenge the congregation in the coming fiscal year to help make up the some of that anticipated deficit. But we'll have to see how that plays out as the year progresses. So finally, the details of the budget. As I said, the general fund budget shows a shortfall of $55,000. and we'll see how we cover that. It's our proposal to cover it with operating reserve funds that we have available to us to utilize for this purpose. It's fair to say that our actual giving revenue continues to show a year-over-year decline. Multiple donors have passed away. Several folks moved out of the area or just simply left OSLC. We expect that to happen, especially during this period of transition, and are prepared for that contingency. But with that said, pledges are reduced relative to previous years. 34 pledges were received versus an average of 48 from the previous 3 years. But it's fair to say also that our giving revenue remains strong. Creekside Common revenue continues to be strong, but has reached an apparent plateau. 232,000 is projected for the current fiscal year. But in conversations with our staff, it's clear that we can't really, our facility doesn't have the ability to go beyond about $240,000 of projected facility partner revenue in any fiscal year. So that's what we're projecting for fiscal year 2025. Our overall staff costs are actually lower than last year, 338,000 versus last year, which was 360,000. And most of that differential has to do with not having Dan's salary, but that's offset by some increased staff costs for obviously our new interim pastor, Scott Sorensen, and then staff going to full-time, Martin and Carrie, both going to full-time to make up some of the duties that Pastor Dan had taken care of during his tenure. And then we also hired Megan Kim to be our temporary caring minister for the period of May of this year through July of this year. So 1 month in the fiscal year, this is what we budgeted for. Our expenses, our administrative expenses include our facility costs have increased relative to last year, about $10,000 relative to last year. And this is due mostly to higher operating costs for insurance, utilities, maintenance, etc. So that's something we expect. It's also important to note that we don't include anticipated capital expenditures. That's not included in this budget. This is an operating budget, since they're really outside of the general fund purview. But we obviously have to address our capital expenditure situation, which will be addressed with the congregation in separate venues. So wanted to also share with you the total budget comparison to previous years. Obviously, the proposed fiscal year 2025 is on the right-hand side of this table. And if you look back the 3 previous fiscal years, actuals for 2022 and 2023, and estimated for this, excuse me, this current fiscal year of 2024. And you can see that we're pretty much in line, a little bit higher on our expenses or our disbursements relative to previous years. Obviously, we have expenses that we have to incur to maintain our property and make sure that it's worthy of being rented out to our tenants in Creekside Commons. And our receipts forecasts are increasing just slightly relative to previous years, but not too significantly different. Obviously, we have a larger fund transfer amount, this projected for this upcoming fiscal year at $55,000 to make up the gap between our disbursements and receipts. But we're confident, based on the fact that we do have that money in our coffers right now, so we will be able to cover the deficit through that method. So the next steps for the budget. If you have any questions based on this video, feel free to reach out to me by email at treasurer@oslc.net. The budget will be presented to the congregation on the June 23rd congregational meeting. Given that the current period that we're facing right now at OSLC is one of transition, the congregation is going to be advised that this budget will be revisited after about 6 months or into the new calendar year of 2025, just to make sure that we have the ability to make some modifications and adjustments. For example, we might be in a position to make a call to a new pastor by the time we get to the next to January, early 2025, January, February timeframe. And obviously, we haven't budgeted for a full-time pastor in this current budget, so adjustments would have to be made mid-year for that occurrence should it happen. So there will be a motion put on the table in the congregational meeting on June 23rd to approve the fiscal year 2025 budget with a provision to revisit the budget on or around January 2025. So thank you for your attention. That concludes my presentation for this year. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me by email at treasurer@oslc.net. Thank you for your time and have a great day.